we don't know what Canada is going to need of its people, but we know that for Canada to have the safe, prosperous, secure environment that we all believe, there are some people who are going to have to stand up and be ready to defend that.
How can a set of skills lead you down the path to success? That's what we're setting out to answer on the Ed Up Canada podcast. I'm your host, Michael Sangster. Join me as we unpack how leaders around the world have taken training and skills and turned that into a lasting career. Now let's learn together. Welcome back to the Ed Up Canada podcast. I'm Michael Sangster, your host, and we've got an exciting guest today. I know we say that a lot, but I've had the pleasure last weekend or 2 weekends ago spending a bit of time with this gentleman. Not enough because I had to head back to Ottawa, but we spent a little bit of time together at the Halifax Fleet Week, participating and watching what was going on around careers in the Navy, and it was a great experience to watch this man walk around the room and inspire people while still having a beer in his hand, enjoying a bit of time with his people, but having some fun. And I wanted to have him on board because I can't think of a better way of explaining some of the careers and the opportunities that are available to people who work in the Navy. So with that, I'd like to introduce Vice-Admiral Angus Topshee, who's now leading the Navy. And I'm going to start off with something strange for people. Vice-Admiral, but you're in charge. So explain that to me that you're not the Admiral.
Yeah, well, it's because back in 1968, we unified all three services of the Canadian military into the single Canadian Armed Forces. So my boss is General Jenny Carignan. She's a full general. All of the remaining service chiefs have 3 maple leaves on our shoulders, and so we are vice admirals and lieutenant generals.
I just expected when I met the vice admiral that somewhere there was an admiral, but it kind of, civilians, we look at things a little different sometimes.
There can be an admiral if they appoint an admiral to be the commander, the chief of the defense staff.
So let's jump right in because I've had the pleasure. I got to go out at the Leaders at Sea program and go out on the HMCS St. John's, and I've had Captain Anderson join me on the podcast, and I've had Chris Elliott from your, community outreach group, but also the commander of HMCS Windsor, I believe, the base there.
Yeah, he's the CO of HMCS Star, which is in Windsor. We actually also have an HMCS Windsor, which is one of our Victoria-class submarines. So it can be a bit confusing when you name ships for cities and you also have Naval Reserve units in those cities. We've made it as hard as possible, I think.
You got to make it confusing. But what I've managed to get a grip on is I had no clue the number of careers and opportunities that exist within the Royal Canadian Navy. And I wanted to have you on because over the next month, we're going to be interviewing the crew of the HMCS St. John's as they head over to a deployment I believe it's in the Mediterranean, but we're going to be talking to them about all the different jobs and roles that are on board and offshore to support the men and women who serve our nation. But I want to talk a little bit about your own career. I was interesting to find out today, you grew up in Bell's Corners and now you're in the Bell's Corners Carling campus D&D headquarters, right? Strange combo.
It is, yeah. But I also joined the Air Force. I wanted to be a pilot initially, and it turns out I'm not very good at landing planes. And so I was fortunate enough that the Navy saw something in me, and it's worked out pretty well.
So talk to me a little bit about the career opportunities that exist within the Royal Canadian Navy, even a little bit of how many people you're looking for, the kind of roles, and I think more importantly, the opportunity and the stability for someone who wants to serve our nation.
Yeah, so our desired end strength is about 8,600 in the regular force and another 5,600 in the reserve force. So there's lots of jobs. We're a bit short on both of those sides, about 23% short overall for our trained effective strength. That's for fully qualified sailors for the positions that they're in. We've recruited a fair bit, so we're working our way, training all of those new Canadians in, but there's plenty of opportunity within the Royal Canadian Navy. What we're looking for is people who have a sense of adventure, a desire to do something bigger than themselves, and who want to be a part of a team that does important stuff. And so I think one of the best ways I've heard summing it up is the Australian Navy has a slogan. It's called "Live a Story Worth Telling." And it really, to me, is all about you can do something that you'd be proud to tell your friends about in the Royal Canadian Navy.
So you've risen to the top ranks. I have to say I've worked in big companies, big organizations as a leader with Intellis, within an aerospace company, now with the National Association of Career Colleges. Jeff Anderson, Captain Anderson, one of the best leaders I've ever seen. On ship, commanding a team, having fun, but zooming in on focus. What kind of, over the path of your career, the Navy invested in you? And I think that's an important part that people need to understand if they're going to join the Navy. It's not sign up and have a job, is it?
No, it's not at all. And you've just highlighted two of our commanding officers. And so Jeff Anderson commanding a frigate, I would argue that is probably the best job in the Royal Canadian Navy. And yes, I include my own in that list. I would happily switch places with Jeff. And then Chris Elliott, my mistake earlier, I said he was Star. He's actually down in Windsor in the Reserve Division there. But he's the commanding officer of the Naval Reserve Division there. Both of them responsible for all of the sailors under their command. Chris, it's a stone frigate. It doesn't get to go to sea. That's why Jeff's got by far the best job. He takes these Canadians to sea in a ship. And we've learned that the impression people have of the Navy is so often based on the first commanding officer that they experience and the first coxswain or senior enlisted on their ship, because that's the model of what right will look like to them for the rest of their career. So we spend a lot of time making sure we pick the right people to command our ships and Naval Reserve divisions.
So it was interesting to get on board because we, other than two rooms, one we never got into and one that we got a tour, but they turned half the equipment off while we had a tour. We had free reign of the boat. We had a real opportunity to get around and see the way things were. And about 3 a.m, myself and Henry Devlin from Willis College and I were up on the bridge, chatting with the crew. And the captain walked in because they were unloading a contractor in Halifax Port, and he wanted to watch that they did it right. And we had free reign to really embrace and talk to anybody on the ship. And what struck me is sailors were stopping us to explain what we were watching when we were just walking through an area. They really embraced having a bunch of civilians on board.
Yeah, sailors are remarkable. Incredibly proud of the sailors that make up the Royal Canadian Navy. And that's one of the things we love doing with the Canadian Leaders at Sea, and any opportunity we have to take people to sea with us so they can really understand what sailors are doing. And I've always said that the only way you can truly appreciate the Navy is to spend a couple of nights at sea with us, because we could do a pretty good job of pretending what things are like for a few hours on board. Where you really start to appreciate that we're in a 24/7 business, that things never stop, but that at the same time, it's actually a pretty good life, is when you spend a couple of days at sea. You see the rhythm of the ship. You learn that we serve 5 hot meals a day and soup every day at 10 o'clock in the morning. You won't lack for food in the Navy. You also won't lack for adventure. You know what we do, we work with high-tech equipment across the board. There are jobs that are on the outside of the ship. We talk about bosuns, the ones who are the seamanship experts on the ship. We're responsible for all of the sort of coordinating all the major sailing activities, like how we refuel the ship at sea from another ship without going into harbor. And then we have other people who, in the operations room, one of those places that you weren't allowed to go visit unless we turned the equipment off, there's some people who may never know that the sun is up or down because they're in there on a computer screen all of the time, working through different things and then sharing experiences with other friends as they go down below. But the great thing and the biggest change I've seen from the start of my career to now is the connectivity with friends and family back home. When I first started sailing, my family could send me a letter. They would send it to the ship. The fleet mail office would send it to wherever they thought the ship would be next. We would hope that those two things would line up reasonably well. You had to number all your letters to make sure you read them in the right sequence when they eventually arrived. And, we had one email address for the entire ship's company. So if you sent an email to the ship, you had to write the name of the person that you wanted to send it to in the subject line, because they would print it off and then they'd bring it to you. And then you would bring your own email back to them on a disc, one of those old floppy disks for them to send off. That was the Navy I joined. Now we have people who are FaceTiming back home, who stay connected, who can post on Instagram, Snapchat, all sorts of things from sea in the middle of the Pacific. We've had people defend their PhD thesis in the middle of the ocean. I think one of the first Canadians to sign their mortgage electronically was done aboard a Royal Canadian Navy ship. So, it's amazing how technology today is enabling us to be connected to home like we're still there, even when we're far out to sea.
Well, we were trying to interview the crew of the St. John's while we were at Fleet Week, and we finally decided the best way to do it was when they had their 4-day sail across the Atlantic, or their 3-day sail across the Atlantic, because they've got a little bit of time in their hands and we could set up a room and the internet connectivity is good enough, which just blew my mind. And I come from a tech background. So I'm going to lead in here with a statement and see if it answers your career. But what I was really impressed with on the ship was that we had one job, except for maybe the senior ranks. But the firefighter tour we got was also a gentleman who was showing us how to fire a weapon. If I'm correct, it was the same gentleman, but they were talking about all the different roles. many different roles and jobs and opportunities, your own career, like how many different things have you done in the Navy? Because to me, it's an adventure, as you said, with the Australian Navy. It's the experience. So how many kind of roles do you think you had?
Well, I've lost count. It's because one of the things I love is that I've worked for the same employer my entire career, but I've had a different job every 2 or 3 years, and I've had the opportunity to do something different. My whole ambition was to be the commanding officer of a ship, and I achieved that in 2009 when I got command of HMCS Algonquin for 18 months. I was all set to leave the Navy at that point. And the next thing I knew, this probably the smartest decision the Navy ever made in terms of retaining me is they shipped me straight off to Afghanistan. It was in 2011. We were switching over to a training mission, and I wound up going over to assist in running the Afghan National Police Training General Command, running the all 36 police training sites across Afghanistan. So I went from commanding an air defense destroyer at sea to helping train a police force in a landlocked country, in the middle of Asia. And I learned that, while that wasn't what I expected to be doing, the skills that I'd been given, the leadership experience, the sort of systems level knowledge of operations really enabled me to be able to succeed in that environment. And it showed me that there's so much else that you can do in the Navy, so much you can do in the Canadian Armed Forces. And I think one of the great strengths is you'll have a job, a core job that's your responsibility, and it could be maintaining the weapon systems on the ship. But we're always looking for people to do extra things. I trained as a ship's diver, so in that capacity, I would jump off the side of the ship, do hull searches underneath, do minor repairs. I jumped out of a helicopter into the ocean, trained as a rescue swimmer. These are some great little adventures that you can have along the way. We have sailors who are trained as helicopter crash rescue firefighters, so extremely advanced firefighters who react to sort of aircraft crashing on the ship. We have others who are trained in boarding operations, going across to another ship, seizing control of that ship, and then examining it for any illicit cargo. And those are just the secondary jobs, the things that you do on top of your regular job that just create this continuous sense of adventure.
I was struck that there's some other things that the average Canadian would understand that are needed and crucial. Chefs, truckers, logistics, supply chain people. I don't want to say there's as many, but there's a significant amount of careers on shore that support the Royal Canadian Navy as well.
Yeah, it's amazing when you think about our cooks. So like I said, 5 hot meals a day because we're operating 24/7. And so if your system is such that you need to have a meal at midnight or 4 o'clock in the morning before you get up and go on watch, we've got those set up and ready to go. But the cooks aren't just feeding the 250 people that are on board one of our frigates. They can turn to and put on a dinner that is literally fit for the king, because if, we happen to have the king on board, they are the ones that would serve that formal meal to whoever comes down. And I'll tell you, one of the best jobs I had as a commanding officer is that I was the evaluator to decide whether or not the 5-course dinner that they had to serve to check off a package was sufficiently good. And I remember being blown away by what this young sailor had put together for this incredible meal. I'm thinking, okay, this is great. And the chief cook's like, no, sir, he missed this. He needed to do that better. And I was like, the standard was just incredible. And so, that sailor, I remember the chief, I was like, do we really have to make him do this again? Yep. Yeah. No, he's going to be better. And he did. He was. The next time it was, oh my God, somehow he went even better. And the nice thing was we got to experience 2 of those meals for that sailor. But the quality of that food, incredible. The standard that we're able to maintain and healthy. We got rid of deep fat fryers on the ship a while back, but you wouldn't know it. We can serve comfort food when you feel like good old fashioned comfort food. Absolutely. But if you're looking for the latest and sort of modern cutting edge, pho has been served on board our ship, all sorts of different bowls and things. It's the cooks are just always looking to innovate and see what they can do to improve morale on the ship.
I'm involved in owning a restaurant, and it's interesting because we're having problems finding chefs. I assume you're having the same problem. So you are looking for people who want to serve the nation in a different way.
Absolutely. And it's a great way to build some experience on your resume if you're looking to do something, just to gain some leadership training as well, to run a large enterprise, to do things differently. Because, the cooks are also our casualty clearers on board. So not only are you working to cook and support the ship's company, but in the event that we take damage or something happens on board, you're trained in advanced first aid, able to sort of come and potentially save the lives of your fellow sailors.
Hi, Head Up Canada listeners. Before we get to the rest of today's episode, I want to tell you about Gale Force Wins, a proud Atlantic Canadian and veteran-owned digital content company. Gale Force Wins specializes in telling the authentic stories of regulated career colleges through interviews and on-location filming. They will quickly capture powerful moments that truly connect with your audience. From students to staff and community stakeholders, Gale Force Wins brings your college's impact to life with ease and respect for your time and budget. Graduation ceremonies are a fantastic opportunity to showcase your college's success, and Gale Force Wins is ready to capture it all. NAC members can take advantage of a special early booking offer. Find out more at galeforcewins.com. Gale Force Wins. Genuine and authentic storytelling done with speed and ease. I've had the pleasure of being a friend of General Rick Hillier, and he has a great phrase. He says, when I took over the Canadian Armed Forces, there was a theory that if we wanted you to have a family, we would have issued you one with your uniform. Can you talk to me a little bit about the way the families of the men and women who serve our country are treated now? Because I've seen the difference. I've heard it from people.
Yeah, that same joke was made in the Navy. If you're meant to have a family, we'd issue you with one. I've had 4 kids while I've been in the Navy. My wife was in the military as well. We were able to balance our 2 careers for a long time. She served for 23 years. And there are plenty of supports in place to assist in terms of raising families. We offer tremendous parental leave and maternity leave as well. So topped up to 93% of your salary, effectively the same salary when you balance it all out. So we do put an emphasis on making sure that people have the chance to be with their families. The benefits to families are significant. If you move across the country, we pay for the family to move with you as well. And actually, some of the best family vacations my family have been sort of taking advantage of that move from Victoria all the way across to Halifax, 12 days to drive across the country. A great way to see the country. And that entire time, there's a per diem. Every member of your family is given money for food, hotels, all of the mileage across. We want to take care of that. We're working to improve the quality of and access to childcare, making sure that we support people in getting family doctors as they go across from province to province. Educational supports are in place as well. It's challenging, but it's never easy to raise a family at the best of times. And we can't make your kids like you any more or less. We can't promise that, but we promise to make sure that you're there for your family when you need to be.
We do like to keep it a little bit fun and loose here too. So I got to ask, commanding a ship or commanding a family of 5 women, what's the harder role that you've had to play in your life? Because I'm guessing you didn't command the family.
No, absolutely not. So it's funny, whenever people, for a while, when they'd ask me, what keeps you awake at night? And I'd be like, I'm actually really well trained for my day job. It's my family. It's like just realizing how demanding the world is today, how hard it is to raise children in today's environment, to manage all of the challenges that go on with that. So the sort of the source of anxiety and angst and sort of uncertainty in my life is all related to trying to do the best job I can as a husband and father.
Well, and I had the pleasure of speaking with General Hillier a lot across country when we used to do a lot of events together. And what I left that experience with was a better understanding of the strain and stress on the family. It's not easy, and your wife served too. But that's not an easy lifestyle for the people at home worrying about someone off, and you've served Afghanistan and other places. So that must be a difficult task.
It is, and it's interesting. It's one of those places where you still see gender norms come through. So I had deployed a number of times. My wife also deployed. So those times where my wife deployed and I was left with the kids, one of them I actually had to move from Victoria down to the U.S. So a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, I'm moving them down. And every time I ran into somebody, it was like, oh my God, what a miracle. You're able to take care of them. The kids' hair is even braided and taken care of. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Every time I deployed and my wife was left with the kids, it was sort of like, well, this is what you asked for, isn't it? You didn't have to have kids. So it was really interesting to see that there's still this gender norm that mothers left at home taking care of kids, not nearly as notable as fathers. I would say any parent who is the one that's at home taking care of the kids when their spouse is deployed is the superhero in all of that. We have a fantastic system designed to support our sailors when they're deployed. The family at home is the ones who are trying to manage everything they ever had to manage with one less parent. And that's a tough go.
Something as simple as a car dying that needs to be repaired, and it's the only car, and you're trying to figure out the finances, but someone's far, far away and can't be of assistance. Those are the kinds of experiences I was able to see, the stresses on the family. So I want to talk today because you've got this program, the Naval Experience Program, which if you can talk a little bit about that, because I think it's brilliant, and I understand you're having a fairly large success rate with the people who go through it. But if I was to enroll in that program, what are the kind of things I would do over the course of a year in the Naval Experience Program?
Yeah, so it's a fully paid internship. So the starting salary is around $42,000 for that 1 year. Plus, you still get 4 weeks of vacation time in that time. So we'll even pay to fly you home to your family during that year. You'll do the same basic training that everybody who joins the Canadian Armed Forces does. That's about 9 weeks long in normally Saint-Jean, Quebec, or in Borden, Ontario. Then you'll do 4 weeks of the Naval Environmental Training Program. That's to train you as a firefighter on a ship, to give you Navy first aid, to teach you sea survival, all of the skills you need to have to be a competent sailor, general duty sailor on board a ship. And so after that just over 3 month period, you'll be sent to one of the two coasts. You get your choice of coast, so you can pick either Halifax or Victoria, British Columbia. And then we're going to run you through an exposure to everything that the Navy does. So every job in the Navy, because you've joined as a sailor, a general duty sailor, and we want you to have the exposure to all of the different occupations. If you discover that sort of, running the engines that drive the ship and maintaining all of the control systems is their thing, then a marine systems technician is probably the job for you. You'll see what that job does, and then we'll streamline you into that at the end of the year. Likewise, if you decide you really want to be the bosun, work in the operations room, whatever you come away from that thinking, I'd like to do this. There's a path to being an officer as well, potentially. There's a path to subsidized training and education. So if you decide you want to be that marine systems technician, then we'll send you off for the 2 years of training at a technical college, fully subsidized if you enroll into that program. So it's a great way to spend a year. You'll also, go to sea for a period of time. Ideally, we try and get people to join a ship that's deployed on an international operation, so you get a bit of a sense of that value proposition of the Navy. If you join the Navy, you'll see the world, so we show you a bit of the world. And we also want to make sure you get an informed choice about Victoria versus Halifax. I'm not going to weigh in onto which of those is the better place to live, because I have 2 kids born in each one, so I'd like to say I'm fairly bi-coastal in that way. But if you've based yourself in Halifax for the program, we'll ship you out to Victoria for a bit so you can see the other coast and vice versa. We really want to make sure that over the course of that year, you see everything the Navy has to offer. And we get a chance, too, to evaluate the individual, make sure they're the right fit for us. And then at the end of the year, if the individual decides, I really do want to make a career in the Navy, and we've said, yeah, this is the type of sailor we want. So as long as it's a mutual agreement, then we'll look to hire that person on full time. And so far, of the people who make it through the program, 80% are staying on full time, which is exactly the target that we set at the beginning. Because the other thing we know is it's not a life for everybody. And so we know that some people are going to decide, they'll have had an exposure to the Navy and realize, okay, yeah, no, admire what you do, but I don't want to be doing it myself. That's perfectly fine. Because, we've figured that out. You've got some life experience, and now you can go off and do something else. And we're not going to spend time training someone to do a job they don't want to do in the end.
It's a really neat program. When I heard the return rates, I wasn't surprised. But as a young Canadian, $42,000 a year, room and board paid, a couple of flights, 2 submissions, 13 weeks, I think it was, or 3 months of training with the armed forces, you're going to leave with skills.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And there's no strings attached at the end of the year. If it doesn't work out and it's not what you want to do, then, hey, you leave with our best wishes.
At 56 and a half, it's a bit late for me, I think. I hear 57's the cutoff. For enrolling. I have to say, I walked around this. Sorry?
It is. It's the whole idea of completing a 3-year contract before age 60. So that's why 57 is the cutoff. But, it's never too late.
Who knows? Maybe I'll sign up in the next 6 weeks here. I have to tell you, it wasn't something I was exposed to when I was younger, but I could see 100% having done it if I'd had the exposure that is going on now with some of these programs, because it would have been a complete change from the pathways of my family. But we had people who'd served. But I could see that teamwork, that camaraderie, that opportunity to lead bring an incredible opportunity. And I was blown away being on the boat for the day and a half we spent out and did a lot of different things, had a chance to see what was going on, but also just to sit in the mess and talk to the crew for a couple hours about their life and how they've gotten to where they were. And there was an immense pride on that ship about the work that they do. But so we ask everybody a couple of questions. This kind of leads me into your own life, your own career. You've risen to the top of the Navy, and I'm interested in a skill that you believe you've got, because we've got a lot of students that listen to this program, but a lot of people thinking about their careers. A skill that's made you successful, and whether it's something you developed early in life or you had your own, or it's something you've had to work hard at over time.
So I think the biggest skill that the military has given me is sort of a comfort in a leadership role, comfort in front of people. When I came out of high school, I was an athlete. The only place I ever felt as though I could really take charge was maybe on a sports field, because I had the skill to sort of be respected. But otherwise, I hated the idea of standing up in the front of a classroom of people and talking to them. I never wanted to put myself out there. I was a bit introverted. probably a lot introverted. And the military gave me the confidence and the skills to be able to take charge of people, to become comfortable speaking in front of an audience, to give me the background to sort of enable me to do that, help me learn what works, what doesn't work. So I would say that the biggest thing I've got is this confidence and leadership have come from the military. They were in me, but I didn't see them. I didn't know how to activate them. And it was the Navy that brought them out.
The experience. So I'll go back to the other question we ask people, because there's probably a mentor somewhere along the line there. We ask everybody to talk about a mentor because we think that's such a crucial part of career development, is finding them, asking for them, but also being one. So is there a mentor in your career in the Navy that stands out?
Yeah, probably my first commanding officer, Dave Hudock. So when I first joined HMCS Winnipeg in 1997, he was the CO. We deployed right away for 6 months as part of a NATO task group. I deployed with him again the next year to South America. And throughout all of that, he just conveyed that he was having such incredible joy in doing the job. I just looked at that and said, that's the job I want to have. He sort of saw that I had a talent for navigation, so he would challenge me with all sorts of different things to get there. And so I eventually became a ship's navigator. That course was not easy, but was easier because of the work he'd done to help me along the way. And then I had a couple of opportunities to work for him again, both in Ottawa and in the East Coast. And every time I just gained so much from the opportunity to listen to him, to see his philosophy of leadership, and for him to sort of just come in with a bit of advice from time to time about how to best manage my career, how to best approach things.
Do you think he knows he was a mentor to you?
I have told him that. Yeah, absolutely.
It's an interesting question. People kind of want to react to that going, I'm not sure. I should maybe make an effort to make sure they know. So I want to go back to the careers on board. We've talked about the ship, but there's also a bunch of off or onshore jobs that are crucial in the Navy. Have you had some ideas for people, what are the kind of the roles the Navy is really looking for right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So intelligence officers and intelligence operators support the work of the Navy. So they're the people who really do the work to understand what's going on in the world, share that with us so that we can best tailor our operations to support that. We've got a lot of jobs for cyber operators who are doing both. So we have fleet cyber teams that defend the networks of the ships. And so they may not sail with the ships, but they're integral to the success of that ship. We're moving a lot of stuff into drones, and so remotely controlled and autonomous vessels and vehicles. And so there's increasingly a role for technicians and drone operators who become really good at that. Again, not necessarily a job that would be on a ship, but certainly something that supports that. And then actually the Navy and the Department of Defense in general are one of the largest employers of blue-collar workforce through the federal public service. And so we've got fleet maintenance facilities on both coasts who are high-quality civilian technicians who work through the public service to maintain our ships, to work with the secret systems that are integral to what we do, work with advanced combat systems, advanced electronics. It's just incredible the skill sets that we've got in the entire enterprise that sustains and supports the Navy.
Well, I've had the pleasure of touring two major shipyards, one on each coast, companies that you work with. And I got to tell you, when I was in the aerospace business, I got to go tour Airbus's facilities building aircraft. And these two facilities are just as good, if not better, than anything that's being built or is organized in Europe and in other countries. We can be proud about our defense procurement now, can't we?
Yeah, 15 years ago, the Government of Canada made a commitment to build a sovereign shipbuilding capability in Canada through what was called the National Shipbuilding Strategy. It's been a challenging journey. It took us a while to get it right. We built a shipyard in Halifax, then we built the first ship. And of course, there were some hiccups and challenges along the way, but we've now delivered an incredible product in the Harry DeWolf class. That ship has gone to places no Royal Canadian Navy ship has ever been before. It's probably the most popular ship in the fleet with the sailors just because of the comfort and capability that it represents. And it's going to continue to do great things for us. But what's even more exciting is now that yard is converting from building those Arctic icebreakers into building the destroyers that Canada needs for the future. The future HMCS Fraser, the first of Canada's river-class destroyers, is now under construction, and really excited about the future that it offers.
Well, we're seeing an exciting moment in time where acceptance in investing in our military and our defense is rising. The government's playing a bigger role in ensuring we increase those investments. I can talk about politics, you can't, but it is refreshing from my point of view to see a government making that commitment. Now's the hard work to live up to those commitments, to ensure we invest properly. So let me ask you kind of a good finishing question here. I'm sitting at my desk. I'm thinking enrolling in the Canadian Armed Forces. I'm clearly going to choose the Navy over the Army or the Air Force. But tell me, why would you encourage a young Angus Topshee to join the military?
Because I really do think that this is an interesting moment in our history where Canada is under threat in ways that were hard for us to imagine, having just enjoyed 30 years of relative peace and prosperity after the Cold War ended. We don't know what Canada is going to need of its people, but we know that for Canada to have the safe, prosperous, secure environment that we all believe, there are some people who are going to have to stand up and be ready to defend that, to go onto the oceans that surround Canada, look for those threats that are coming towards us and be prepared to defend our great country against those. And so there's no better time to join the Navy. We're building incredible capability and our country needs us right now. So I'd say it's an incredible career. You will see places, you will do great things, you will be proud to talk about it, and you will learn some great skills along the way.
And I would bet that you have developed some of the greatest friendships from the men and women you served with too.
Absolutely. All my closest friends, as my kids bug me, in particular my 16-year-old, is like, do you have any non-military friends? And the answer is yes, but she knows the military ones best of all.
Well, it'd be interesting because they must have attended a lot of events and a lot of functions over the years where Dad was looked up to. So that's got to be a unique perspective. One last question. Is there anything else that you want to mention? Any other reasons? Because I think we're spending some time, Chris Elliott and I, trying to track the jobs in the Royal Canadian Navy towards some of the career training our colleges do. And interestingly, we just did a survey at a college and 70% of the graduates have asked, can I meet with the Navy? Can they come in and talk to us? Because maybe that is the career path that I'd like to go on, because there's this serve the nation attitude. So is there anything else that you'd like to add to our listeners that might be of interest to them?
Yeah, I would encourage anyone who's even thinking about the Navy is to go find your local Naval Reserve Division and head on down there at some point. They parade usually 1 or 2 weekdays, and then occasionally on the weekends as well. It's a great opportunity to meet some sailors and get a better sense of it, because we recognize it's really hard to know an organization until you meet the people in it. So there's 24 Naval Reserve Divisions across Canada, a couple of other detachments in places that we're building, like in Surrey and in Kitchener-Waterloo. So there's probably one relatively close to you. Go down and meet with the people there, and that's the best way to get a sense of whether or not it's for you.
That's incredible. I'm really looking forward when the HMCS St. John sets out, and we're going to do these interviews and roll them out one a day about all the different roles. And I think we'll be surprised just how many roles there are on board for someone to pursue. The data analytics was one. We were chatting about cyber with Captain Anderson. He said, well, we need data analytics people. And we'll retrain them. You take them to a certain level, we'll take them to here. And I'm really excited to do this series of interviews to let Canadians know the opportunities exist in the Royal Canadian Navy for a great career.
Yeah, there are. And there's tremendous subsidized education within the Navy, right? So we spend money on some of the best courses in the world. And then the other thing that we don't talk about very much is after 12 years in the military, you are given, I think it's over $100,000 to put towards education when you get out now. You get about half of that after 6 years if you leave. We're working to see if we can actually give you access to that money while you're still serving. I think that's where I'd love to get to, sort of a GI Bill type setup where you can use this education money for yourself, maybe even down the road, potentially for your family as well. We're working to see how, we've got this great benefit. Let's make maximum use of it, because education is one of the biggest value prop. Education is just such a big part of what we do.
We agree. We have actually submitted documents to the government suggesting those very things, because we think there's a great opportunity, and we'd like to see more focus on the spouses and children of active military and the kind of things that we can do to support them. And so I'm glad to hear you talk about that as well. And I know we had a couple minutes in Halifax to talk about that. So I think with that, I want to leave it there for this week's episode. Vice-Admiral, I'm really glad you could join us today. And I do want to leave thanking you for your service, because it is service in the nation. Nobody gets rich serving the nation in the military. But I would argue that you become wealthy in many other ways, don't you?
That's a great way to put it. I certainly cherish the memories that this career has given me.
Yep. And I thank you for the openness to chat today, and for the people in the Navy who've been working with us and that want to chat some more and have that opportunity to go out on the ship and be out with some people that are just doing great things for our country. So thank you for your service. And with that, we'll wrap up this week's edition of the Ed Up Canada podcast, and we look forward to being back with you again next week. Thank you. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Ed Up Canada podcast. We release new episodes regularly, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so you know when they are officially out. If you love this episode, please leave a 4 or 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts so that others can also discover how a set of skills can lead to success. Thanks for learning with us.